discussing about the critical issue in managerial communication, which is gender communication inequality in leadership context in Malaysia.
So basically, this issue is strongly has been reflected as nationwide. So as you all know, right, led by Nancy Shukri, as well as the official insight of the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development of KPWKM. So
according to KPWKM report, although Malaysia has made the progress in empowering the women in the industry, but still their representation is still lacking in terms of leadership and decision-making roles.
Okay, I definitely would agree with this because this imbalance directly, and also it helps to it actually affects the communications when fewer women, less women represent in leadership spaces, their voice are very less, and their voices are very less in terms of shaping the decisions.
And in terms of managerial communication too, this is a very serious issue because effective communication is not just about delivering the messages, but it's also about recognition and a representation and equal participation. Okay, Yoga, how about we consider a realistic workplace scenario based on the two highlighted by the Nancy Shukri, and then based on the KPWKM reports.
Alright, okay, so imagine, let's bring a realistic event. So imagine a meeting where a female manager, she presented well, she prepared well, and she prepared a well-presented idea. However, her suggestion may be overlooked, just because she's a woman. Her suggestion is overlooked and the discussion moves without her acknowledgement.
And then after that, when suddenly a male colleague presents a similar idea, suddenly his ideas are being praised and being accepted.
I agree with it because it's not a coincidence. When people see it as a coincidence, it's actually not, where it actually reflects on what researchers call gendered communication bias that usually happens in a communication place in an organization and everything, where the value of the message, it depends on gender, which is very, very unfair. The message has to be based on the context, not on the gender.
And then as a woman myself, I feel like women are often more interrupted, and then they are need to repeat their ideas multiple times just for the recognition.
Okay, so basically this situation actually, I just got to remember when Afrina said this, it can be explained during, for example, role concurrency theory, where it suggested that women are expected to behave in a communal way, such as being polite, such as being supportive, or rather than being very assertive.
And then, but when women communicate assertively, they are seen as aggressive.
But correct.
But suddenly, when we women communicate politely, we are seen as weak or lacking authority. And then, as a Malaysian, from a Malaysian cultural perspective, this issue is very complex, because this is due to the norms of it emphasizes the hierarchy and indirect communication, especially for the women.
Okay, so from overall, what we have, told from this issue and everything, so it's actually not an individual communication skills issue. It actually shaped by the power structures, having a bias of being men and women, cultural expectations, and also the gender norm.
Address this issue.
Okay, so first of all, from the recommendation that we would like to give, the organization also can introduce a training and unconscious bias or a gender-sensitive communication, so where employees become aware of how this gender has been an influence towards their perception.
Yeah, I think this, what you are saying, is aligned with the gender-like theory,
Yeah.
Because, women and men, we communicate differently. We have different communication style, and neither of it should be undervalued.
Exactly. So the third recommendation that I would like to give is probably organization, they must create a culture of psychological safety where the employees, they feel very, very confident to express their idea without being feared, without being ignored, judged, or maybe their gender couldn't be an obstacle for them to share it.
Exactly. And I think managers should focus on evaluating the ideas based on merit itself, based on the logic, and then evidence rather than gender of the speaker.
Okay, so in conclusion, we would like to bring out, based on the issue that has been came out, gender communication inequality, especially in the leadership field, is a real issue in Malaysia. People have not talked about it. So as highlighted by Nancy Shukri and the KPWKM reports as well.
And this issue shows that communication in leadership is not just about skill, but it's about power, representation, and then societal expectation.
Exactly. So addressing this challenge is very, very essential for the current situation. It helps to build you more inclusive, you feel very, effective, and also effective towards the organizations.
Yeah, and okay, that's all for today. Thank you, Yoga.
Thank you, Aprina.
And then thank you guys for listening to our podcast today. And I hope today's discussion will give you some valuable insights in, this gender communication in leadership.
Okay, bye-bye.